Welcome to the Dating After Divorce podcast. I'm your host, Shade Curry, and I believe every divorced woman deserves a romantic relationship where she feels safe, loved, and cherished. You can create the most amazing life after divorce, and I will teach you how. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I am your host, Shadi Curry, and I am so excited today to bring you my latest guest, Heidi Freeman. I'm going to read her bio because Heidi is you're a little unusual for my guests. Like, you're not selling dating, and you're not a dating coach. Like, you are just like a real human who has written her story and wants to tell people. So I'm just really intrigued. And I'm just going to read your bio. Heidi is formerly Goldstein, born Eisman. You're a successful attorney and partner at a large law firm specializing in all areas of environmental law, social, and environmental, social, and governance-based counseling. But you've written a book called Love Lessons. It's your first book. And that's what we're here to talk about today. But also, you've written regularly for Bloomberg, Law 360, and other publications related to your professional life and your experience as an attorney. You live in Cleveland Heights, Ohio, with your husband, Will, and your fur baby. And your blended family, 2 children of your own and 2 bonus children with your partner. So welcome, Heidi, to the show. It's such a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you.
Absolutely. So I really want to just dive into the book because I love, I come from an IT background, so I love data, I love research. And you set out on this journey to figure love out.
I did.
Tell me about that. What happened there?
So I turned 40, which was 15 years ago. And I will say it's a little embarrassing to admit, but I decided as I was turning 40, and that was kind of this pivotal point for me for whatever reason. I think people have, when they reach those decade markers, whether it's 40 or 50 or 30, you sort of contemplate your life. And I decided that I did not know what true love looked like or felt like. I decided I had never been truly in love. And yes, I'd been married and I did love my ex-husband, but not in that way that I was looking for. And so I went around and I decided that I was going to interview friends and people that I knew fairly well that based on my own observation, I felt that they were in a very strong, solid, good partnership. And I wanted to ask them why they knew it was that person. How did they know? It was very elusive to me. It just seemed this gray area when I'm a super black and white. I was looking for an answer. And I was all about data. And I was flying around doing depositions because I had a very national practice, spent too much time on airplanes back in those days. And I would read over the notes from my research, and I realized that there was themes. And no matter how many people I talked to, the same themes presented themselves over and over again. And so I ended up writing the themes in chapters of a book that I then parked for a while, because I did get to the point where I started not to hear new, even each story is a little new, a little different, tweaked a bit. It was really the same theme. So I felt that I had done the research and I had put it in the back of my head, and then I moved forward.
Yeah. Were there themes that were surprising to you that was like, oh my goodness, I had no idea this was a part of a good partnership?
I would say that they were less surprising than they were impactful or insightful, meaning I think the me that knew what a good relationship looked like had these ideas, even though I had never felt them. Probably the most impactful one, and I wouldn't say it was surprising, but it was really how folks talked about taking turns taking care of each other. I am a serial fixer and sort of always jumping in and things like that. And these couples, and I never interview them together. I always like to talk to people separately, but even separately, they would always talk about this happened and, she pulled me up and,
Mm.
this happened and I pulled my partner up. And so it was a lot of sharing back and forth. And it was at a time when I was doing a lot of therapy. I'm a huge fan. And my therapist and I had already come up with this weird visual about life being a series of waves. And basically, you're going to go under at some point, and you need someone to pull you up. And you can't be the puller upper every single time, or it's going to be exhausting. And so I had already had that visual in my mind, and then it came to life through these interviews. So that was the one that was the most impactful to me. The only thing I would say that was surprising is that I talked to 50 some people the first time and maybe six more when I was writing the rest of the book post COVID. I wanted to make sure the themes still stuck and they were still true. Um, no one talked about love at first sight. People talked about an initial connection. I knew it felt different. I felt like I could share myself. I felt safe. But no one used the word like I saw her across the room. It was love at first sight, or I saw, him, whatever. And so that was probably the only thing that was surprising to me. And maybe that's just a little bit of a fantasy, that idea.
Yeah, I think it is. Not that it can't happen,
Sure.
but that the way we center it in love stories, in the media, in
Right.
our young teenage fantasy crushes, I think is harmful.
Right.
Because there can be interest at first sight. There can be something interesting or something that catches your eye.
Right.
It could be the way the person is talking or the way they're dressed or even how hot they are. Like all of that is
Sure.
legitimate can be legitimate interest at first sight.
A hundred
But the
percent.
concept of love at first sight, I think, is not as useful as we've tried to make it.
Yeah, and I think I'm not even sure that's possible. I think it's attraction at first sight is kind of where you're going and what I believe. There definitely needs to be a physical attraction component. You can't make yourself like somebody. And I talk about that a lot. But it's different to be physically attracted to someone than to actually feel true love, which I think actually develops over time and you know it when you feel it, which was amazing to me because it was this aloof thing. And then when it happened to me, I had no doubt in my mind. So it really is about listening to your gut, but also tuning it up. I mean, I had gone through 10 years, Sade, of like so many dates and like self discovery. It sounds super cheesy, but it was. Like I did not have confidence in my personal life. In my professional life, I was a badass already. Like I mean, I knew what I was doing. I felt good about my professional career, but personally for some reason I didn't feel worthy, and it took 10 years and 104 dates and lots of other things to happen for me to really feel worthy of the partner I finally was able to get.
Yeah, I mean that story, I've just heard that so many times over and
Mhm.
over. All my coaching sessions, women I've interviewed on the podcast, and it's not I think it's not us. This is the way we are socialized.
Right.
Like we're socialized to value relationships, which is awesome. It's not a problem. But then we're also then socialized to put our own personal value in relationships. And
Correct.
that's what's harmful. So it's sort of like this fairy tale that you have to have accomplished in one of my clients' words, to have accomplished adulthood, you have to have achieved this. And it's quote unquote so hard that it's hard to feel confident when your entire existence as a human is hinging on
Well,
this
right.
one thing.
I mean, I heard something so I did a podcast yesterday with a friend, and she came up with the term Noah's Ark syndrome, which is, I just caught on to that, which is sort of this syndrome of feeling like you have to be paired up, right? You have to have an other. And there's lots of reasons people don't. I know there's sort of single by choice. What is that? SBC. These people use that terminology. I'm not cool enough to know all of those, but there's also people that do want to be paired up, but are smart enough to wait. I mean, I wrote the book in all honesty, even though I did the research initially, I actually wrote the book, 12, 13, 14 years later for my 4 kids because I really did not want them to make the same mistakes that I made or that Will might have made in terms of like not settling for what we really wanted in life and in trying to make sure you found the best partner for yourself. And I think that it's accomplished its purpose. I believe for the most part, they all took it in, and we have a lot of good relationship discussions now. And my son and I started a podcast, which we could talk about later. But yeah, so that was the real purpose for me to write it. So the fact that I mean, if I can help one more person have hope and find love, I would be thrilled. I love fixing people up because I got fixed up, so I want to pay it forward. And I just think the world needs more love and hope now. I mean, and that is not a bad thing. And so the more we can spread it for ourselves, with connections, whether they're friendships or professional or romantic.
Yeah, 100%. And you had said that one of the most impactful themes that you discovered was what I've referred to, and I think generally is referred to as mutual reciprocity.
I
In
like that.
that, where one partner pulls the other person up when they need it, and then the other partner does their turn, and it's like this, you know, both pedals are pedaling depending on what part of the cycle that you're in. And I think that's also something that is missing in many ways in society. Like that's how the human race has survived.
Right.
I was reading this story about I don't know, they found, okay, I'm not going to tell you correctly, but they found this mummy, like the really 1,000-year-old bones of a woman or something.
Okay.
And her femur was broken. So this was an elderly person, and the thigh bone was broken. And where they found it, and the other fact that they found it with the village and on the trail, showed that humans have been caring for the most
Mm,
vulnerable for thousands of years. That's how we have survived
right. Right.
as a species, is caring for people who can't care for themselves. And that's just exactly what came to my mind. I was like, yeah, that at different points in time in a relationship, if it's going to last a long time, you're going to go through all kinds of things. And it's important for each partner to do their part. And often when we find that relationships don't work, it's because that's missing.
Right. Or someone's trying to fix somebody or change somebody or, that I have a whole chapter on, no project dating type of situations. I had plenty of those as well. So,
Oh yeah, there's
that's just
so
going
many
to lead to
stories.
disappointment and frustration, frankly.
Mhm.
So I made that mistake way too many times. And it's really part of valuing yourself is finding someone who doesn't require that you guys can grow together rather than feeling like you have an obligation to make them different or better or quit
Mhm.
something or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. One of the principles I teach my clients is that there are certain, you don't do married things when you're dating. Like, so the mutual reciprocity where you're pouring into someone's career, like that's for later.
Right,
That's
right,
not for the third date, which I have a
right.
client who went on a first date, and this man spent the entire day talking about how he lost his job,
Right,
and
right.
she's
He's
a
like, I'm not
coach.
your therapist, but
Right.
so I'd say to my kids, it's something I've always said, which is like, we all try to be our best selves, right? And I truly believe that you need to be your best self before you're ready to have a relationship with anyone else. And most of us have a lot of work to do, and I certainly did mine. And I was talking to my son today actually about the fact that when you're 22, like he is, for example, you're not even emotionally involved. And so people that get in these long-term relationships in high school or college, it amazes me. And they are the exception to the rule. And I've decided my parents, for example, have been together since high school. And they are most definitely each other's person and gave me
Mhm.
this idealistic almost marriage situation that I didn't necessarily ever understand, to be honest with you, because they've been together for 60 some years now. So, they just probably, I think, knew what each other wanted at an earlier age than I think most people do. It was also a different day and age back then, which things are a little bit different now.
The first step to successful online dating is your dating profile. Now, what if you could create a dating profile that makes all the difference to your online experience? Imagine having a profile so magnetic that quality matches stop mid-scroll to connect with you. The people you want to talk to you say, oh my God, I've got to talk to her. You want a profile that instantly communicates who you are at your core and attracts people who genuinely align with what matters most to you. So I want to share with you the Captivate dating profile system, where you'll learn how to create a profile that stops the scroll of the person who's a match for you, captures attention immediately with authentic value-based content, showcases your true self in a way that resonates with the man you want to talk to, and naturally filters out people who are mismatches before they waste your time. So I want you to check out the Captivate dating profile system at shadicurry.com/dating. That's SADECURRY/dating. And for the price of dinner out, you can create the best dating profile ever. And when I say best dating profile, I mean it. It will be uniquely you so that you stop looking like every other woman on the apps. All right, go on over there and check it out. Yeah, and I've looked at some of those couples as well. And what you'll find, because there were a lot of marriages in that day and time that didn't work either. Like
Yes,
they
that's
weren't
true.
better.
That's
So
true.
there are social psychologists have done studies on what creates longevity in long-term relationships. And some people just happen to, without trying, fall into that. Either because they saw those relationships, so by osmosis in their own families and in their
Mm,
own environment, they picked up on those cues. And so they just kind of, like some people just kind of do things because
sure,
it's part of the environment. There
sure.
are those people, and, God bless them. They're so blessed to just have that. It's like when
Exactly.
you're born into a family of hunters, you just kind of know how to track the deer. Nobody has to teach you. That's
Not
kind of
over here.
right. And so some
Yeah.
people do have that, but there are actually things like, I think similarity is one of them. So similarity of values is highly important. Similarity of lifestyle. The opposites attract cliche is not true at all.
That one's super interesting, Shanae. I feel like I saw as many opposites that did attract that didn't attract, and I didn't find that to be very, in terms of a finding. It didn't seem very significant to me because there was plenty of places where people were sort of opposite and they played off each other, and then there's like my situation where our kids make fun of us that my husband and I have our same, like literally have the same brain. So,
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
it just depends. And
yeah. But it's
it's
not
much
because
more
they're
about
opposites.
timing and fit.
Yeah, it's not because they're opposites or not opposites. It's the other thing. So you could be opposites, but if your lifestyle is similar and your
Right.
values are similar and you're in the right place in life at the same time,
Exactly.
that kind of works out. And then if you are similar and all those other things are in place. So I mean, they talk about proximity. They have like a list of things. Aesthetics is part of it. So we tend to look for someone who has sort of like not necessarily similar features to our caregivers, but like similar micro expressions.
Mm,
Like there's just all of those little things that
interesting.
we just don't know that plays into that. But I do love that you brought up mutual reciprocity, because that is, I think, even if you didn't have all the other sprinkles in a relationship, but you had mutual reciprocity and safety, you could make a good relationship out of that just
For
by
sure.
yourself.
And safety is an interesting one. And so, um, the one thing I'll say about safety is while it showed up in the initial interviews, not using the term safe, the initial interviews, it was much more, I felt like I was at home. I felt
Mhm.
comfortable. He embraced my crazy. Like those were the kinds of words that I had written down. I did 6 interviews last year just because I said, it's post COVID. What if relationships are different and it's not the same. And so I interviewed different people and I heard the same themes all over again. But the new theme that emerged so clearly was I feel safe. And I personally
Mm.
wonder if that relates to what happened during COVID, which made people realize that the significant other they had in their life brought them safety during this very unsafe time. And all six people I talked to talked about the element of safety and how important it was as a foundational piece to the relationship. So I do feel that that's a post 2020, not that it's different, it's sort of enhanced what I heard before.
Yeah, amazing. Now, did you write the book while you were going on the 104 dates? After? Like, where was this happening?
So I wrote the first book, part of the book, in my 40s, and I had kept a journal through most of the process. In the book, there's like little journal entries throughout the book. Those were the hardest, by the way. We can certainly talk about that, but that I hate thinking back how lonely and unhappy I was. But
Mhm.
anyways, and then I wrote, it had interspersed a little bit about my dating in it, but then I found it several years ago on my computer, which seems crazy after you write a first part of a book, you forgot about it, but I did. Life happened. And I was stopped and was like, I would love to apply this to Will and our relationship, and I wonder what it would look like. And I reread it and I decided all the themes applied, including the new ones. And I had a few of my own. And then I just started, going through and talking about some of my dates interspersed with the themes and Will. And then at the end, you have 11 love lessons that I learned through the journey of my research, my relationship, my dates, all of those things. And so I did have a bunch of notes in my journals about my dates. And frankly, the ones that I wrote about, I would never forget about because there was some really bad, awful dates. And I will say, like, also some of the funniest experiences of my natural life and really good cocktail banter when you had to show up as a single without a significant other for some kind of wedding or bar mitzvah or something. I had great cocktail conversation about my dates.
Yeah. Did you know you would end up going on over 100 dates before finding your person?
I would have never, ever thought that I would have. Now, it wasn't 104 guys. It was about 55 people. There was three or four people that I dated for some period of time. So went on multiple dates and I did count those. And none of them were really relationships. My son taught me the term situationship, and I think they were more situationships, to be honest with you. But no, I mean, I started counting after the fourth date, and I was being fixed up 10 ways to Tuesday, and I was like, okay, this is going to be a journey, and I'm going to just start counting. But I would have never, and there was many times that I was like, done. In fact, I think pretty
Mm.
close to right before I met Will, I was like, I'm done. I'm not, I had to go to a wedding by myself, and it was just the worst experience after I was dating somebody and had RSVP'd for two. And then she said, well, it's too late to change. You're just going to have to sit next to an empty seat. Now, is that not symbolic of my life at the time? But then that was literally the low that led me to the high of the fix up of Will. So you just got to keep on keeping on. It's a journey. And, what if I was still laying in bed crying about that wedding? I mean, my life would be so much different. And so you just got to, as I like to tell my kids, put on your big girl underwear and go back out there
Yeah, if you want it, if it's
if you
something
want it.
that you want, it's
Sure.
because because of podcasts and social media, relationships seem like they're really fraught right now. Like, oh my God, it's really hard to find a person, and it never used to be this way. It's always been this way.
I think it's always been this way. I think it's more publicized
Mhm.
and I think there's more experts on it. The one thing I think that's an interesting shift is, talking to girlfriends that are single and other people. People are very interested again in dating in the wild, getting back into it versus like the kids who are in their 20s, they're so tied to technology and the apps and all of that. And so I think the people that are trying to find true life partners when you're in your, 30s and 40s, there's this reinvigoration into dating in the wild and having in-person events and meeting people and making connections, which I love because I think, an authentic meeting is always going to be better than trying to portray something on an app that is very hard to be your authentic self through that device.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. My experience has been people say a lot of things and do things actually quite differently from what they say. So 100% everyone wants to meet their partner in the wild.
Hmm.
However, it takes a lot more effort.
Yes.
And so I will encounter people who are talking very vigorously about meeting people in the wild, but spending more time on the apps.
Interesting.
Yeah, so like
Interesting.
when I'm coaching women, one of the things we our coaching model starts with the circumstance. So what are the facts?
Okay.
And whenever we explore the facts of what's happening, it's interesting that the facts are that more a lot of people are on the apps. Now they don't like the apps.
Yeah. I think that's
But
true.
on that Friday night,
Right.
they don't have any invitations and they nothing's happening. There's just all it's just one click away. And so what I try to evangelize is more of a balanced approach because
Sure.
it can be a perfectionist fantasy to believe that you're going to go out in the depending on people's circumstances,
Sure.
children, career,
Sure.
travel,
Sure.
energy. I try to say, hey, why don't we just do all the things? Okay. So then that way we have what I call all the portals are open. And if he wants to step through one of the portals,
I like that. That's a good way to say it.
yeah, he's coming through and you sort of have this sustainable energy where
Mm.
you have your social calendar, whatever social calendar you can sustain versus I got to go out 3 times a week, even though I'm very busy. So you've got that. And then you've got the apps. And then you're talking to your friends and having them fix you up. And then you're talking about your dating journey on social media. So people who are in your network online, I'm like, just keep it all open. And I think that kind of takes off the pressure to make it
The
happen.
one thing I would add, I totally agree. The one thing I would add, though, Sade, I think is instead of just telling your friends, this is my big like speech that I always give. So it's probably getting a little bit old for some people now, but you have to explore and tell people outside of your network. And if you just tell your current network, it's going to be the same people all the time.
Yeah.
And so I can't even tell you how many times I have counseled somebody to do this. So I'll quickly tell you the story about how I met my husband. So I am a huge yogi. I love hot yoga. I go to Cleveland Yoga here. My friend Tammy Schneider owns it, and it is just my favorite place in the world. I've been going for decades. So I would go and I would go on the weekends and it was my break and I would go in the front row because type A personality, I need to be staring at a wall in order to be like Zen during yoga. But I would constantly end up doing yoga next to the same couple of people. And we would say hi and whatever. And then we'd talk a little. And eventually, this one woman, Anne, said to me, so what's your story? Like, are you married? Like, what's your story? And then we ended up really talking and I would come in and share my bad dates with these. It was two guys and me and Ann, so the four of us. We call us the front row crew. And we really developed a friendship. But after this whole wedding fiasco thing that happened to me, I came in the next day and Anne was just beside herself. She wanted me to like take her husband to the wedding because she was just, no one should have to do that. And she told me that every time she sees this guy who she did not know that well, she thinks of me. And she wondered if I'll be open to getting fixed up with him. And so at the time, by the way, I had like absolved all my rules. He was 10 years older than me. I had this stupid rule that I wasn't dating anybody who was more than 5 years older than me. I hate rules. There should be no rules.
No rules.
And no rules. And so I said sure by that time. And, there we went. Now, there's more to it because he hadn't gone out in 24 years. He thought you still had to call somebody to ask them out. It took a little provoking. I had to be my aggressive self, but it all happened and it's happily ever after. But my point is, if I didn't go to yoga and meet these people who I would probably never normally just meet otherwise and talk to them, I would have probably not met my husband, which seems mind boggling to me, frankly, but it's true. And like my oldest son just moved to California a while back, and he just moved to a new part. And we had this long talk, like, go join a running club. And he's done all the things. He's a quick learner, and he's done, do things that you love to expand the circle. And even if someone in this new running club is not your match, maybe they know somebody and they'll end up fixing you up. It's really about, I look at it, the visual I like to give is like, here's your circle. You need to there should be lots of other circles around your circle full of people you talk to that say you're interested in getting fixed up, because that is the ticket, I think, in my mind, of
I agree 100%.
getting to where you want to be.
Yeah, I agree 100%, like 100%, because, and not just because you get to meet a lot more people, also because, when you're looking at core values, when you're looking at who would be a match for you, again, like the social psychologists say, similarity of values is super important. Well, you're most likely going to find people of similar interests and similar values as add-ons to your network, versus the apps, which are useful. I think they're very useful. I have clients who've met their person on the apps, but they are more like a bar. And so we have to be really strategic and work the algorithm, and we do all kinds of things to like make it work so it's not super stressful. But when you're dating within your network and outside of your network, you're actually meeting, it's like who knows who. Right. And so I will, when we put together like their dating strategy, here's how you're going to do it. It's usually like, okay, we're going to go to all these places. And then so a woman will go to, I don't know, she'll go to a dance club, right? I actually have a client who went to a dance club for the first time. And she got there and she was like, it was all these older couples, like in their 60s, and no one was single. And I'm like, okay, the point is not for you, just like you said, is not to go to the dance class and meet your person.
Right.
The point is to go to the dance class and meet people and create community and let people get to know you, because guess what? Older grandpa and grandmas they have sons, they have nephews, they have cousins. And if they like you,
right,
they will definitely introduce you to that son of theirs who's been single way too long, in their opinion.
Right. It's so true. And I just want to say, I agree with you on the apps. In fact, the one thing I always encourage people to go on the apps for, even when they say, I hate the apps, I'm not doing the apps. And I don't mean like young kids, because I'm going to put that aside. I'm going to say, people who are probably ready to meet the person. Because it puts you in this open dating vibe mind. I think some people, I just said this to a really good friend who had a bad relationship a while back and is starting to think about getting back out there. And I was very blunt with her, and I adore her. She's just one of my favorite people. But I was like, you have a closed vibe. You need to open your vibe. And part of the way you open it is just, I liked the safety of the apps at first. I'm, very analytical. I can do my due diligence. You can Google them. You can look on the apps. You can kind of see what you can figure out. Let's make sure they're not bankrupt. They're not a serial killer, whatever the things are. But then you can email back and forth. And I do think you get a feeling of whether someone's, normal enough to go out with or whatever, in those emails. And so I try to make it like not a quick fix, but an investment. And when you invest in that process, I just think like, okay, tell yourself you're going to go out with 3 app dates over the next month, and it just changes your vibe. It says, okay, I'm open to dating. It's almost like practice. It's I say the same thing to my kid. Let's do a mock job interview before you do the real job interview, because you don't want to be unprepared. Preparation and preparation plus opportunity equals luck, and there is a luck component 100%.
To it. Okay, when I think about I was in the dating pool for 18 months, start to finish. But when I think of the me that started, if I had met my
18 months
husband,
is pretty quick, sister, by the way. That's
I
like
know,
not
I feel kind of proud of myself. I'm
bad.
like,
Okay.
but when I think of the me that started out and the me that met my husband, we were very different. I was okay, so I'm kind of like that deep dive rabbit hole kind of person. Like when I'm ready to figure something out, like nothing else exists. So that's kind of how I did my personal development after my divorce. And so I just kind of figured those things out pretty quickly. But I remember early on, you're talking probably the first month I was on the apps. One guy sent me a hi, how are you? Kind of just brief email. And I found the email recently. I was telling my clients about it. It was 700 words long. That was my response.
Oh, wow.
So I'm so glad I got that out of the way. Now, of course, looking back, he was definitely not the person for me. Like my husband is just so many notches above that.
See,
But
meant to be. Yes,
yeah, but
exactly.
I got that like
Yeah.
naive, desperate, pick me energy out of the way
Yes.
very
Yes.
quickly with those early guys.
Yes, yes, exactly. And you don't always say how when people ask you, like, well, what happened in your marriage? Or that's assuming you were divorced, or why are you not married yet? Or, whatever it might be, it sometimes helps to practice and see what you want to say. But at the end of the day, I do believe in authenticity because I think every foundation of relationship has to be authentic. And I think that even I have a friend, Paula Edgar, and I was on her branding room podcast a little bit ago, and she was saying that she always gives her friends on apps a hard time because they're not being authentic. And she feels like you've got to revisit what you put on the apps and make it more authentic if you want to meet anybody that's worth meeting.
Oh my
And
God.
I
Yes.
do think that that's like a very important thing. It's like it can be the
Critical.
social media, like, oh, we look happy even when we're not. I mean, I think an idea, at least a general idea of who you are has to be out there.
Yes. This is my biggest pet peeve is the dating profiles. I have so much to say about
Yes.
people's dating profiles. And actually I have a $47 product, like just for your profile, because I'm horrified at it, but I realize we don't know how to do this. No one is doing it wrong because no one knows how to do it. Right. And we're told, like, okay, you got to go on the apps and now you've got to say what men want, or there are rules, or there's etiquette, and there are all these like fake rules about how to be out there. But those rules actually don't exist. And then if you have kind of like low confidence, you can think, okay, well, I want to do it right. I got to say the right things. When what really, and data shows this, okay, Cupid collected data on the people that were on the apps for a very long time. And their data showed that whenever a person had a unique feature, whether the feature was, their ears or their hair, well, like something that they might feel was something negative,
Mm,
if they leaned into it, like if they showed it off, like if they were fun about it, they actually got more interest
interesting.
on the apps.
Well, yeah, because everyone else looks, the same. I will say
Same.
I do counsel the boys all the time here in our family because they've showed me as I've gotten into this relationship and dating stuff even more, through the book, I'm just obsessed with the whole concept. I want everyone to find their happily ever after. But I'm amazed at sort of the Hinge and Tinders of the world and how that works right now. It's very different, frankly, than Match.com or eHarmony or something, back in the day, which, makes me ancient. But, and I know some of those are still around. But the problem, I think, for most people, and I'm not going to say gender specific, but they look at somebody and say, is he attractive or is he not?
Yeah.
And they look at the picture and then they're swiping. And you don't look at, like, what does that person do for a living? Where are they from? What do they enjoy? And in fact, I think you need to look at all of that stuff first and then think about. Now, I'm not saying you should go out with someone you're not attracted to. That is not what I'm saying. There is chemistry that is essential to these relationships. But that being said, a first glance at somebody for 2 seconds doesn't get to what really makes a relationship. And so focus less on a look that you like
Mhm.
and more on what a person's about. And then maybe
Yeah.
you'll get a little farther through the process.
100%, 100%. And here's the thing, you're not this always blows people's minds when they get it. They hear it, but then they don't always get it. You're not even interacting with the person yet.
Right, exactly.
When you're looking at the profile, you're actually not seeing how attractive that person is or isn't yet.
Yeah.
I have if I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to meet a celebrity in person. They are not as attractive as they look.
Very few, actually,
Always, it's
weirdly. I'd
always
like to. There's a
disappointing.
couple I'd like to meet, but no.
It's always
Yeah.
disappointing. I'm like, what is happening? I've been crushing on you forever. This is quite
Ryan Reynolds,
difficult.
by any chance, I'd love to meet him. But anyway, yeah, no,
So
it
I
it
always
is.
tell my clients, I'm like, interact with the dating profiles like you did. And I love that I work with our generation with the phone book. The dating apps are a phone book. That's it. Until you are on a phone call with the person or you have messaged back and forth and verified what they said on their profile, did a video call, a FaceTime call, literally you assume you know nothing about this person.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
That always helps
I think
because
it's really important. It is,
Mhm.
it is, but it's putting yourself out there, and that's what you have to do. And you put yourself out there in every way possible, and then you
Yeah.
hope it happens. And sometimes you have to put yourself out there over and over and over again, but it just takes one person. And I always felt, and when I probably got to some of my lowest points, I think one of the most significant things I said to myself is, what if the next date is him? And I would constantly say that to myself when I didn't want to go. And I said, what if it is? And that's probably kept me going, the
That's
what
such a
if.
great thought. That's such
Yeah,
a great belief. And it turned out to be true. It got to the point where it
it
turned out
did.
to be true. The next
It did.
one was the one. So I'd love to hear like a couple of your funny stories, a couple of your disappointing dating stories. And are these in the book as well?
So a lot of the dates are spattered throughout the book. One of the funniest situations I was in was actually I did Jewish speed dating. So my mother somehow convinced me to go to this Jewish speed dating. And if you haven't done speed dating, I don't even know if they do it anymore, but it's like
I
speed
do.
networking, right? You sit down. 5 minutes, blah blah. So it was at this bar. I went with this friend, and I walked in, and I'm not trying to be like overly mean, but for whatever reason, there was guys from 20 to 65. At the time I was 45 maybe. I mean, I would say several of them lived at home with their mother. And I don't, it's not a Jewish thing. Usually, like, I at the time was hoping to find a Jewish man because again, like for me, that was important. Others, it's not, but it was important for me. And the short version of that story is it was like, I couldn't get over it. And there was not one single person. I was like, I'm moving. Like, I'm literally moving. This is terrible.
I think we all said that. I said it too. Everyone is like, there's no one in my state. I'm
It's just
moving.
terrible. I was, but we let that go. So that was probably one funny. The other funny experience that I talk about a lot is just that I found a guy on Match.com, and I will say I did have two Match.com relationships, situationships, I would say, for several months where I did date each of these guys, and they were guys that I would not normally have interacted with anyway. There's no way I would have met them. And one was better than the other, but I grew from both of those relationships. And so, it did serve its purpose. But this particular date, I had gone back and forth and emailed this guy, and I met him in a bar for a drink, and I sit down. He doesn't look anything. I mean, like, he's bald, wearing like a turtleneck, and in the paragraph in the profile, had like full hair and a cool like it was like not the same. I'm pretty sure it wasn't the same person. So I get there, not we order a drink. 5 minutes in, he brings out these papers that were called a cease and desist order, which was like from Pepsi or Coke to him, basically telling him that he had to stop doing whatever. He was selling something illegally out of his garage, basically. And he wanted my legal advice to look at this and give him advice. And I was so taken aback. Now, this is the time, as I say in the book, my kids were young. And I was like, oh my God, something happened. I have to leave. I was in and out of there in probably 12 minutes total. But it was just one of those ones where you're like, this is just, it was just a double whammy. So that was probably one of my funnier
Oh
ones.
my goodness. Like they will stop at nothing.
They will stop at nothing. Yes. I had many more bad dates than I had good dates. So, and I was not somebody, the other thing I might encourage people to think about, and this might be a contested belief, but I can't tell you how many times I'd go out with somebody once who was like lovely on paper. I got fixed up once. This guy was a surgeon. He had grown girls. He was just like a lovely person. I had zero connection to him on that first date. I could tell in the first 5 minutes he was lovely. He just wasn't my person. And one of my girlfriends at the time was like, you should just go out again. Maybe he'll grow on you. I'm like, I don't need someone to grow on me. Like, that's not what I want. I'd rather be alone than have someone grow on me. So I already had someone growing on me. I don't need another one. So, the one thing I did do fairly regularly is if I went out, and sometimes I went out and I liked the person and they didn't like me. So fine, it happens both ways. I don't want to pretend that I was always the one doing this, but sometimes it was asked out again. And I very clearly said, you know what? I don't think we're a match, but I wish you the best of luck and I'm glad I got to meet you. And I was very, very honest about it, and I didn't want to waste anyone's time, and I didn't want to waste my own time. I mean, I'm a single mom. I had 2 young kids. I had a busy law practice. I was not going out with someone again just to like give it a try. So I do think it's okay to make a judgment quickly, as long as you have an open heart and know yourself well enough to make that judgment.
Yeah, I like to say it a little bit differently because you say it that way.
Fine.
You say it that way, and women run off, and I hear them say, "Oh, I know myself really well, and I have my intuition." I'm like, "Oh, no, no, no. Let's do this." It's okay to say quickly when you have enough information, when you have enough data
Yes,
to
that's fair.
make, which is exactly what you said. But I don't want to give. I talk to women about this all the time, and they're so slippery.
Right. No, and I don't mean like make a judgment before you meet someone, or I'm always the one to say, well, just go out one time. I mean,
Yeah.
it can't hurt,
Yeah.
unless there's some other reason that you don't want to. But if you really go and you have, it's not 10 minutes, and you go and you really know afterwards, this is just not going to work for me, then I'm fine calling it a day. I mean, myself, I'm also a little bit, I tend to be quick on judgment sometimes, for better or for worse, but I do feel like I'm a pretty good judge of character. So,
Right. It sounds like you're a person who, whether you know it or not, you're collecting the data. Like
exactly.
if I asked you, why did you say no to that person? You probably know why, even if you're not conscious. Like what I find is that women will have a feeling
Right.
and they will say no. And I'm like, well, why? Or, and this is what's interesting about people who make those judgments without collecting data, is that in other situations, they will have the data and not make the judgment when they need to.
Mm-hmm.
So I will find women who look at a man on the profile and they're like, well, he's not as attractive as I would like, which is not enough information to say no yet.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
And so they'll be like, well, it's no, I kind of know what I want and all that. However, when a man matches their aesthetic, so he's super hot on the profile, and they get on the phone with him and he's disrespectful or overly
Right.
flirty, which is data, then
Right.
they tell themselves, well, I'm going to go and just see. And I'm like, no, you need to flip that. Check to see how much information you have. And once you have enough information about whether or not this person is respectful or kind or decent, you say no. And if you meet someone online and you don't have enough information yet, get the information. Like you might say, well, I don't want to go on a date. How about I get on a phone call? How about I get on a FaceTime call so that I can, see if he is as ugly as he appears to be in his photos? That's okay. As long as you have the information, I'm good.
Well, and you have to, be self-aware of things. And I think sometimes when you meet somebody in person, they look different, they feel different. I've met so many, like during that process, where like a guy was so much like I've just told you a bad story, but I've had a situation where like I wasn't so sure, and I
Mhm.
met somebody and I was like, oh, he's super cute,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
whatever. I mean, the first thing I texted Anne when she's like, I want play by play when you meet Will, the night she fixed us up. And I was like, he's adorable. That was like my big, so that was my first impression. But it evolved obviously so much from that. So there
Yeah.
does have to be like that good feeling, but you have to be open and not judgmental and give it its opportunity.
Yeah. How did you handle just, it looks like you were very open about your journey, and your friends and family were all watching this, what can feel like a very messy process. And I know a lot of women who hesitate to date because they want to be able to go out and pick the right guy off the shelf and not have any mess, not have any bad stories or bad situations. And when I say bad, I don't mean unsafe. I just mean the guy
Sure.
brings out his lawsuit for you to look for you to look at on
That's
the
a good
date.
one, huh?
Yeah. How did you handle just having
Well, first
eyes
of all,
on
life's
you?
messy. I mean, I think
Mhm.
anyone that thinks that looking for a life partner is not messy or life's not messy I mean, a quick aside, Will, a couple of years ago, right after COVID, got breast cancer. My PSA is men can get breast cancer too. I
Mm.
could not love him more for the warrior he was during that, and it, changed our relationship for the better. But it's life's messy. But that's just an example of that. But I would say I did two things. One is I did not introduce a single guy to my children during my entire dating process. And I very much, people might judge me for this. And I understand there's single moms that didn't have the same level of help that I did, but you do have family and you have friends and other things. I just felt like my kids were not dating. This was not a play date. This was my own experience. And my son at the time was young, and I knew he would attach to any male figure. And I just didn't want any disappointment in his life. And I just didn't feel like he needed that. And so that's how one way I managed it is I kept it very separate. So until I met Will, my kids had never met a guy that I had gone out with. And the rest of it was, I will say, I didn't bring dates to most. Like during that time frame, we were in the bar and bat mitzvah circuit, and I was invited to I went to a lot of galas and stuff for work and things like that. 99% of the time, I did not bring a date. And one of my other lessons was I'm not bringing a date into my work situation or my real deep friendship situation until I feel comfortable doing that. There was one guy who I dated for a little while, and he did meet some of my friends. And but it wasn't in that kind of situation. So I think you just need to make strategic choices and figure out what's the right thing for you. And I
Mhm.
just had to put up those boundaries so it decreased my stress level. I wasn't someone who felt like I'd rather bring a date just to have anyone. I was missing my gay best friend at the time, who I have now. I love that I would bring everywhere with me. Married, whether he's married, but he maybe would have gone with me anyways. But it's one of those things that you just have to figure out how to be comfortable in your own shoes. You are your best date. And
Yeah.
you have to know that and feel that. And so I did put those walls up in certain places to make my life a little less confusing.
Yeah, I love that. And I did the same thing with my kids too. The only man I dated that they met was my husband. I
Okay.
dated other people and I was just like, nope, unless I'm sure this is the one. And even when he met my kids, he met them a little earlier than I would have liked, at 4 months. We had been dating for 4 months because we were going to see Hamilton. And my daughter loved Hamilton and hadn't seen it. Like, she knew the soundtrack. And I was like, I can't go see it without her. So she has to meet you earlier than I would have liked. That's how that happened.
Yeah.
So with Will, how did you know he was the one? I mean, you had dated all these guys, you'd been divorced. What was it about him that was different, and when did you know that? Okay. this is my person.
I would say I was suspicious on our so our first date was supposed to be a drink. It was then it turned into dinner and the whole thing. And it was one of the first times I wanted to stay rather than leave, so that was a positive sign. But there was just this natural connection from the beginning. And I think, to be honest, we came from very similar past marriages. We were raised very similarly. We have very similar values and belief systems. He was CEO of our port authority. He had a very big, important, politically high profile job. He understood my job. And so we just, I had two kids. He had two kids. He's the primary parent for his two kids, as am I. So we just had all of these similarities, and it just became natural and easy to talk to him about anything and everything. And it was funny because he hadn't been on a date in 24 years. I was the first person he dated. And I kept saying to him, are you sure you don't want to like date other people first? And he's like, I'm good. I heard all your stories. I'm perfectly good. So that part was a little bit funny. And I'll never forget, we went away like 4 weeks after our first date for his birthday to Columbus, which is like 2 hours. And my friend Anne, who fixed us up, was having a heart attack. Like, it's too soon. It's too soon. But we told each other we loved each other that weekend, and we've
And
never
there are
looked
no
back.
rules.
Right.
Again,
And
there are
there,
no
and it was
rules.
just, and maybe it's because I had been on that journey that I was so sure. And I wish I could tell you, like, there was something I knew, but it was, I think where we were coming from brought us to this space that worked so well for each other. I think we're both kind of have a helper personality. I think we're both intellectually curious. He's more intellectually curious than I am. And while there's differences, like he's off rafting with his high school friends this week, living in a tent. Like literally my worst. If you want to make me like punish me, make me do that. But like, and he doesn't, he hates yoga. So it just, we still have things that are not our together things, but
I
we have
love
so
that.
much together. And so I just am grateful every single day. And he's the first person I want to tell anything. And, my very best friend and everything else in between. And so I can't believe it's been 10 years we've been married. Because at the same time, it's like, doesn't feel like that, but then I don't remember my life without him. So
Yeah,
I will
amazing.
say, I do think my stomach and gut was tuned up to tell me what was right by then, though. So when I say it's just this perfect feeling that it's right, I didn't have a single doubt on our wedding date in my head
Mm,
whatsoever, like
yeah.
none.
And
And
I know what you're saying because people talk about their intuition.
right,
And I say, like, has your intuition been trained with the right data?
exactly,
Have like if you've only dated your ex and you haven't dated at all, your intuition is not necessarily broken. It just doesn't have enough data. Because intuition, in my opinion, is just pattern recognition. And you have to see a ton of
mm,
patterns to be sure
right,
that you recognize a pattern when you see it.
right.
Otherwise, it could turn out to be one thing or the other. And so
Exactly.
I
That's
really
where
love
therapy
that.
helps.
Yes. Yeah, I'm a big fan of therapy too. A lot of my clients are in therapy and working with me, which is so helpful. Because then sometimes when we're in a coaching session, I'll be like, so what did your therapist say about this? I'm just gonna bounce this over to her.
You gotta do the hard work. You do. It's important.
Yeah, yeah. I absolutely love that. I absolutely love your story.
Thank
Um,
you.
and I love that you mentioned that you have different hobbies because you will be surprised at how many people will look at a dating profile. They don't like camping. They see he likes camping and they're like, no. And I'm like, no, you don't have to go camping with him.
When you're an adult, no one can make you go camping. That's like
Right.
one of the best things in life. So,
Yeah.
and I do say this in the book a little bit, like he's a jam band guy, not my favorite thing. Will I go to a Grateful Dead concert with him? I absolutely will, to be a good wife, but I'm a coffee house on serious kind of chick. Like I'm
Yeah.
not that person. And we do have separate things. I mean, I finally got him to go to Pilates. So we have some shared things too. I mean, we work out with a trainer together. We love our walks. There's so much that we like to do together, travel, lots of things. But we also have independent interests. I mean, he goes out in a kayak all the time. No, thank you. So you don't have to have everything doesn't have to align. But I
Yeah.
do think how you look at the world should align
Hmm.
and where you want your life to go. Like if you're not a traveler and never want to leave where you are and the other person's a traveler, that's a problem. Like, those are the
Hmm.
kinds of things. But otherwise, he can go, be in his tent and I'm, here this week
Yeah.
seeing some friends and doing some fun stuff.
Yeah, and you can't tell the things that matter from a dating profile.
No.
Like you can't. Like you're just not going to be able to tell. I mean, you can tell there's some people that are clearly jerks from their profile. Like I'm not talking about those people.
The
Like
shirtless photos and all of
if
those
they have the eggplant emoji running all across their
things.
profile, they're probably not for you.
Thank God my profiles were pre-eggplant emoji. I
I
forgot
know.
about that. Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Although I did get some bad pics sent to me in messages. So it did happen back then too. And you're like,
Yeah, yeah, no,
yeah,
it did. I think they've gotten a lot better now, thank God, at
good, good.
filtering those things out. But they still happen, especially if you've exchanged numbers and things like that. But oh my gosh, Heidi, your story is so fascinating. I cannot wait. I started the book. I have not finished it, but I cannot wait to read all of the stories. So
I can't
um,
wait.
I don't know if the camera is going to flip this, but for those of you watching on video on YouTube, this is Love Lessons 104 Dates and the Stories That Led Me to True Love by Heidi Freeman. And I highly, highly recommend that you get the book. It's available on Amazon, I believe, is where I got it.
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Goodreads, all of those. Yeah, be great. Thank
Yeah,
you. That would be so fun. And I would
absolutely.
love my newest endeavor is I started a podcast called I Love You More with my 22-year-old son, Zach. And we're talking about all things love, dating, and relationship. And the generational differences are fascinating. I love hearing his perspective. It's on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We have a few episodes out, and we'd love you to listen and follow.
Absolutely. And the link to the book will be in the show notes. The link to the podcast will be in the show notes. And if people want to just connect with you, send you a message, say hi, where is the best place
I
for them to reach
love
you?
connecting with people. So at Love Lessons 104 is my Instagram. You can DM me there or email me at lovelessons104@gmail.com.
Amazing. And so the Instagram will be in the show notes as well for anyone who wants to connect. Heidi, oh my God, thank you so much for
Sunday,
coming on the
thank you. I
podcast
love your
and
wisdom
sharing.
and the way you spattered data and analysis and findings into our conversation was riveting. That's my favorite thing. I love that stuff. So thanks for sharing. I learned a lot from you today as well. And I
Absolutely. I love
appreciate
your
you having me as a
story.
guest.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. All right. We're going to wrap up, but is there any wisdom, any advice, any tip that we didn't cover that you're like, oh, people have got to know this and you just want to throw it out there for the ladies?
The only thing I would say is it's time to spread more love in the world. The world needs it right now. And so I am making it my personal mission to do so. And I just always say, like, think about who you love, whether it's romantic, professional, friendship, just tell someone you love them. I think right now is a good time to keep spreading the love.
Oh, so good. So good. We really, really do need that. And there's so
Absolutely.
romantic love is not the only kind of love.
No,
There's all kinds of love.
lots of connections.
Lots of connection. Thank
So
you,
glad to be
Heidi.
connected to you.
Yes, same here. All right, listeners, we want to thank you for your time and attention. Today has been such a pleasure. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Thanks for being a listener, and we will see you next time. Thanks for listening today. If you are ready to get married after divorce, I want to invite you to download my free 8-video training specifically designed to help divorced women date with ease and get married again. Head over to shadicurry.com to get started. That's SADECURRY.com. I'll see you inside.